If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and then make that change. Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of Psychology with Khian. So back in January, I actually presented a workshop titled Reducing Racism by Making Yourself Stronger at the UBC Student Leadership Conference SLC 2021. At the end of the workshop, I sent out a survey to receive some feedback from the audience, and it turned out that a majority of people, if I'm not mistaken, about 89% of people, indicated that they would share the information that I shared in the workshop to their friends, family, and close ones. And I think all of them indicated that they would come to the workshop again. So I thought, with so much going on right now with Asian hate and how racism has always been on the rise, I thought that I might as well make this information accessible to you guys. And of course, before we get to the workshop, let's not forget to thank our sponsors, FnK Concept, for sponsoring the shirt for today. You can check them out on Shopee or Lazada for cool products at reasonable prices. Without further ado, let's get into it. Broadcasted racism is overwhelming. It can leave us helpless, hopeless, and even distraught, seeing so many tragic events going on around the world. Discrimination against people who are different from the majority in terms of skin color or anything else. And all these things can make us hopeless because racism can seem extremely distant. How are we ever gonna stop this? Well, when you look at the title, you might think, oh my gosh, why is the title Reducing Racism by Making Yourself Stronger? I mean, if I make myself stronger, how is that gonna reduce racism? And jokes aside, even if I'm not racist, how am I gonna ensure that other people are not racist? Because, like Khian always says, there are always stupid people around the world. So how am I gonna do that? Yes, you're right. There are always people who are always gonna be racist. My answer to these questions is changing others is probably the hardest thing you can do. And changing yourself is the easier thing that you can do. I mean, even Michael Jackson agrees with this. He sings, if you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and then make that change. Yes, I'm presenting racism as an individual responsibility. But what if I told you that racism and discrimination are actually not as distal as we think? If anything, they are extremely proximal and we can play a part in stopping it. I'm gonna show how racism can be illustrated in terms of two routes. The easier route is resorting to racism. On the other hand, the more difficult route is the route that we would want to choose to go to stop ourselves from resorting to racism, sexism, or any form of discrimination. And I'm going to use the psych literature to show you how this analogy makes perfect sense. That's right, I'll be presenting racism as an individual responsibility. Idealistic as this may sound, should enough number of people choose to strengthen themselves in this way, racism will be greatly reduced. That's the reason I titled my workshop Reducing Racism by Making Yourself Stronger. Well, before we get into the content, I think it's really important for us to differentiate between three terms, at least in psychological terms. These three terms, before learning about psychology and doing the research, I used to use them interchangeably. I didn't know that they had distinct differences. The first term is stereotype. Stereotype is a belief that you have about certain groups of people, a belief in your mind. An example of a stereotype could be, I think all Chinese people are stingy. That's a belief. It's in your head, in your mind, a thought. The second term is prejudice. Prejudice is an attitude that you hold against other people. This attitude can be both good or bad. An example of a prejudice would be, I think all Chinese people are stingy, so I don't really like them. And people have asked me before, Khian, what do you think is the difference between a stereotype and a belief? In my opinion, a stereotype is just a belief that you have about a certain group of people or things. On the other hand, if you're prejudiced, there are emotional elements in there. In other words, stereotypes are pretty objective. You have a thought about something, but you might not hold any attitude or emotions. While in prejudice, you have emotions, I don't like them. There's a negative balance of emotions in there. And then the third term, discrimination. Discrimination is a behavior that you hold and you treat people or things with that behavior. That behavior can be good or bad. An example of discrimination would be, I treat Chinese people very badly because they're extremely stingy. Having looked at these three terms, you can see how one can transition to another. When you have a belief about something, a stereotype, you're gonna have an attitude, whether positive or negative, emotions, prejudice. And then with the emotions you're gonna have, you're gonna behave in a particular way against people or things. And that's how one can transition to another. Well then, let's look at something really interesting. It's called the implicit association test. I've put the link in the description. Feel free to try it out if you're interested. The implicit association test measures attitudes and beliefs that people may be unwilling or unable to report. In other words, the IAT test measures something called implicit bias. I'm now going to show you the results of the IAT test. And I think that the IAT result that I'm about to show you is pretty representative of at least one segment of the world population. And the reason I say that is because this result consists of over 3 million responses. And let's look at the result together. Can you notice anything special? Well, you can see in the first column, 24% of the responses hold strong automatic preference for European American compared to African American. But what I would like to point out is the middle white bar. 18%, only 18% of the responses have little to no automatic preference between African American and European American. Well, if only 18% of people choose not to be implicitly biased, does that mean that all of us actually have a high chance of being biased, of being implicitly biased, and worse more, being discriminatory and racist? I mean, if there are only 18% of people who can be implicitly non-biased, it leaves 82% of people to be potentially racist. That's a large percentage, man. I mean, 82% in exams is an A minus or even an A in certain universities. The next question automatically would then be, why? Why are people implicitly biased or racist? Or at least, why do the majority of people have such a high potential to be implicitly biased or racist? We will discuss these in part 2. I hope you enjoyed Psychology with Khian today. It's Reducing Racism by Making Yourself Stronger, part 1. Before I end, let me remind you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell icon if you enjoyed the video. Also, big thanks to FnK Concept for sponsoring the shirt. You can check them out on Lazada or Shopee. Cool products at reasonable prices. And until next time, I'm out.